Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
You know, I'm Aaron.
This Seeking Me Productions bring you another movie review.
It's been a minute, but we're finally ready. We're going to go ahead and try and tackle the Hunger Games series.
The film series, anyway.
Exactly.
These films were based on the young adult novels by Suzanne Collins.
And let me just add it right here and right now. I am very terrified. So I've seen quite a few of these dystopian era novels and series and whatnot, and all of them at some point start to become too eerily similar to what we're trying to face right here in the present. And let me just say also that this is probably one of the worst ones that I definitely don't want to see come to true. And there's already too much stuff that's coming out the woodwork that's making me look sideways.
The world of Pan Am.
Mm-hmm.
In which these series of films are set.
It's basically centered within the post-apocalyptic era or dystopian future of what was once called the Americas, specifically North America, United States.
Yes, and in the world in which the setting revolves around, it takes place many years after a big war that devastated a lot of land and whatnot, and so that made a lot of civil wars amongst themselves.
Basically reforged themselves out of the fires of their own stupidity and barbarity into what is now considered to be a futuristic setting. However, things are not as great as it should be because, wow, are people living in tyranny.
Yeah, society in Pan Am are broken off into districts, and with the capital as the headlining point of where the central government resides, and each district has their own occupation and its own little kind of like communities.
But the story of the Hunger Games primarily follows one particular district member, that is Katniss Everdeen of District 12.
Yes, Katniss Everdeen. She is played by Jennifer Lawrence in these films, who is very headstrong and the breadwinner of her family after her father, who used to be a miner, which District 12 is mostly known for doing, died during an incident. And so she takes upon herself to grow up much more older than... she has to take upon the adult responsibility much sooner than was probably destined to be, and take care of her sister, Primrose, and the very isolated mother.
However, along with just trying to keep, make ends meet and trying to stay above the hungers of trying to survive in such a brutal world, Katniss and her sister, along with many other children around Pan Am and within the districts, have to deal with an annual event that pits them all together in what is known as like a battle royale, henceforth named the Hunger Games.
Yes, these Hunger Games came about as punishment for the district members who took it upon themselves to rebel against the Capitol.
And in this particular annual event, the 74th annual Hunger Games, Primrose Everdeen, Katniss Everdeen's sister, has been reaped as tribute.
Yeah, but the thing is, because of her love for her sibling and the fear of losing her, she decides to volunteer as tribute. And thus, she, and along with a male counterpart by the name of
Peter Millard.
Yeah, Peter Millard. He is played by Josh Hutcherson, and thus they two are chosen to be in this year's reaping and going to the Hunger Games.
On their way to the Capitol, both Katniss and Peeta are joined together by their specific entourage that is made there basically to help them out and gain their understanding of how they're going to survive these horrific events that they're about to unfold.
Yes, you have Haymitch, which is the mentor figure of previous the sole winner of District 12's Hunger Games that are barely won in that district. He's played by Woody Harrelson. He's gone through it. He's drunk for many obvious, understandable reasons.
Look, if you're forced at a young age to take on the task of killing other individuals just to survive and having to deal with all the other crap that they're going to throw at you just for entertainment purposes and supposed punishment that some people did a long time ago, you're going to have a drunk, alcoholic problem too.
Yes. Basically, the PR team head by Effie Trinket, played by Elizabeth Banks.
Love her.
Yes, and also the fashion designer of Senna, played by Lenny Kravitz.
This is probably Lenny Kravitz. This is one of my favorite roles for him. I absolutely adore Senna. He brings such a heart, and both him, Effie, and a lot of the individuals that you see following around Katniss and her group are individuals that you really see, can feel as though they're just they're there and genuinely care.
Yes, unlike the Capitol members who just see these as sport and just like they really indulge themselves in these games.
To an extent.
Specifically, the one who's the head of Panem himself, the president, President Snow, Cornelius Snow, played by Donald Sutherland, who is only teased throughout this first film.
But you definitely feel that presence looming.
Yes, and in these Hunger Games, they, like we said, it's a battle royale amongst the 12, one boy and one girl in these districts, and only one come out. One criticism that is spread across all throughout the films, which is a huge missed opportunity, is that you don't actually experience any or understand what each district is about, despite only like District 12 and later on District 13.
Yeah, they don't really. You don't really get a chance to actually sit down and explore the world as much as you want.
The Capitol, in of itself, right off the bat, you understand that this is a science fiction film as well.
Yes.
Due to the fact that the Capitol is the house of all the lot of technological advancements that you see.
Oh yeah.
How they represent this world in the first film is kind of like it's too grounded, mainly due to the fact of Gary Ross's approach and the low budget. Like, even though this is like at the time this was a very big, there was a bigger budget than what Lionsgate was like comfortable with doing. You still see like such a restraint.
Exactly, especially when you look at the concept of the story structure, or at least the material that they're dealing with, which is, again, kids killing kids and being forced to die in horrific events. The way he does, or at least the cinematography within this series, at least this particular outing, the first movie, is a lot of shaky cam, and it does obscure a lot from the elements of the movie that you would actually see as visceral.
Like the VFX is like it's not as polished as it could be, and it's just it's a good introduction to the world Panem, with the central character taking his lead, but it is lacking on so many fronts on a world building standpoint. Heading towards the Hunger Games: Catching Fire, its sequel,
which is probably one of my favorites in the series.
Francis Lawrence takes the reins as director going forward. This is an exponential improvement upon the film of the Hunger Games. Lionsgate, they got the confidence to increase the budget a lot more, and thus the production is a lot more focused and clear and sharper.
Basically, the story in this particular one is after the events of the first game, where Katniss and Peeta had made the incredible noble sacrifice of wanting to die, or at least play it off as if they was going to die for each other's love with a handful of poisonous berries. They basically win the games by default, because at the end of the day, the games have to have a winner.
Yeah, and been a huge PR campaign,
exactly.
For a PR nightmare.
Exactly.
Because of the fact that they built off this fabricated love for that, even the Capitol members had to, they were won over.
Exactly.
But thing is, with the expanded role of Donald Sutherland's President Cornelius Snow, they utilized this to really flesh out just how much of a threat he can really be.
He is so insidious and venomous in his portrayal of this character, such a conniving snake, and it's very prevalent as you see him chew up scenery, especially with Katniss.
Yes, and we start to see a more develop this more personal antagonistic figure with Snow when he confronts Katniss early in the film. A lot of this played off the star-crossed lovers scenario is played throughout the film, especially before the latest Hunger Games upcoming event has to take place. The winners have to take upon themselves to do a tribute tour.
Yes, which ultimately ends with the new announcement of this year's Hunger Games, which ends up changing the rules a bit because this time it is under the guise of what is known as a quarter quell, an anniversary event of the very traumatic events that basically shaped all of Pan Am in whole, where the rules are switched around, and this time allowing victors to be the tribute pool this time around.
Which is basically a one way in which Pearson Snow tried to get back at Katniss personally because of her very evident. The Catching Fire is one of the better sequels. One way is how they balance out the original cast, with Jennifer Lawrence is really defining her role as Katniss with a very relatable, yet dignified character, who in her dignity and prideful manners tend to get herself in trouble a lot. But the thing is, this is also expanded upon the new cast as well, which is some of the best new cast members in a sequel and film in general.
Yes, you have characters like Finnick Odair, the District 4 tribute of the fishing village, who is this preemie boy who is supposed to be the capital's darling.
Yeah, Jenna Malone, she plays the character of
Joanna Mason.
She is a wild card character. You never know what type of way she'll swing. You have Jeffrey Wright, who plays the character of Beatty.
Ooh.
And he's really instrumental in how when this year's Hunger Games take shape. But every Hunger Games you have a game maker. Last year in the first film, it was played by what was it, Seneca?
Yes, Seneca.
Seneca, he was the original one in the first one.
Who did basically in that particular game is a bit of an oath and didn't necessarily take things as seriously as he should. He was a seasoned game maker and felt as though he was too big for his britches. But in this particular one, we have Plutarch Heavensby,
played by the late Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh wow!
Who's an instrumental figure in a lot of the twists and turns that happen across the Hunger Games series going forward.
Exactly.
Like we said, the production is a lot more it's a lot more stepped up in this regard, and we can see a lot better fleshed out capital. We get a sense of the societal aspects. It's really like a gut wrenching. Day and night scenario, how the districts are treated.
And then when you see as this capital who basically takes everything for granted, everything's handed to them on silver platters, literally, and you see just how much they definitely look down or basically don't value the kinds of lives in a sense the same way as district members do.
Yes, and this production is increased with what the VFX is able to do,
and of course the introduction of the IMAX camera system that was basically implemented for this series, this particular movie in general.
Yes, you're able to
basically opens up the lens incredibly well.
Yes, and it really highlights the new technological advancements that the Capitol members are able to pull off, especially in this year's Hunger Games. But with complete overhaul, basically with how the movies are looked, with the new director, a great soundtrack.
Oh yeah!
By the way, this was one of the best sequel films of all time,
and possibly have one of the best endings that a movie can actually have.
Yes.
I've had chills by the end of that movie.
Yeah, you cannot wait until the next outing to the point that we say this is an amazing film.
And that, of course, sends us right into Mockingjay Part 1.
Now, Francis Lawrence, he continues to film these movies, and this is a two-parter of the last book in this trilogy.
Exactly.
And this time around, Pan Am is in this brewing stage of almost a upcoming civil war. Katniss
and the rest of District 12 and District 13, of all places, are basically in a war against the capital itself.
But they're trying to get to war because the story and how this film is structured is a propaganda thriller.
Exactly. A lot of the scenes in the storylines revolve around Katniss being built up to be this heroic leader. She's like the figurehead of the whole movement, known in this particular series as the Mockingjay.
Yes, and throughout this campaign, she's trying to rally up many districts and to take up arms to go up against the capital.
Exactly. A lot of the scenes in this movie are very haunting, especially when you look at the destruction of certain areas, i.e. District 12 and maybe a few others, and desperately seeing just how deep the bonds and horrors that the districts had to go through.
But even then, we still up until this last, we're in this final stretch of this series that yet again, the films never take the time to really flesh out the other districts.
Exactly.
We see little bursts of what is going on, but they're so a lot of that stuff is too quick or it happens too off screen.
Very true.
Something like if we were to go back to Catching Fire when they were doing the tribute tour, that could have been an easier way of which to explore at least two other districts and what they are all about. But this film do try to build up back the relationship that basically started off this whole thing. Primrose, everything she has grown to be more of an independent figure.
Yes.
Inspired by Katniss's sacrifice, as being a tribute for District 12, and so she's helping out very much as a supporting figure in District 13.
And that also, turns around. You look at the other characters, specifically some of the capital members that decided to join Katniss in a group, i.e., Ify Trinket and Plutarch Heavensby.
But a new group of characters that defected from Capital, which is basically a whole little film crew.
Exactly.
A film crew that who tag along and follows Katniss as she goes around this propaganda tour. One central figure who is introduced in the Mockingjay films is President Coin, who is a leader of District 13.
Now, President Coin's particular character, at first, is just a more of a stern, militant leader that has to deal with the constructs of war times. Quickly evolves into a more a tyrannical leader in and of herself. That basically segues us into part 2. Part 1, even though there was a lot of good elements within it, at the end of the day, I feel as though that one was just a good movie. It wasn't necessarily as amazing as Catching Fire was.
But that was very much like a middle of the road. It's built like it was set up. While part 2 was the payoff of what part 1 was doing. This one, Panem is now at war.
Katniss fully steps into the role of the Mockingjay, but unfortunately for her, because of President Coy's intervention, is very much just seen as the figurehead, front of the lines type of individual to just gain prosperity. Not prosperity, but
propaganda.
Yeah, propaganda for the basically war effort in and of itself.
Trying to sideline Katniss, but Katniss, over the course of these films, she basically does a lot of things on her own a whim.
Exactly.
She's very independent, and one of the things that drives part 2 forward is the official assassination plot of President Snow, in which basically take the film crew people. Who are also a pack of elite soldiers. The war in of itself is shaped as if it's this own little mini Hunger Games.
Oh yeah, that basically it became the 76 Hunger Games in of itself, which was jokingly referred to by Finnick Odair.
President Snow, we see a lot of the breaking down of his humility in this film, but also President Coin's role being a lot more devious, to the point that you don't know. At the end of the day, which one is more ethically or morally sound-minded, and what culminates is a very solemn, failing victory on multiple fronts.
Yeah, there's so many losses in this.
So many losses, but the subject matter warrants it. Yeah. Francis Lawrence, his direction is solid, but the thing is, they're with Mockingjay. Specifically in these two films, it's too straightforward in how it was directed, to the point that
it's almost completely on one person's point of view, who unfortunately had to sneak into other events that could have been magnified if given the opportunity. Again, this is supposed to be a war epic film at the end of the day, but we really don't get a full grand scale of how deep and traumatic the war could have actually been if we were allowed.
Overall, I would say there's a reason why The Hunger Games has been beloved.
Mm-hmm.
And these are still solid films, and each in individual entry to point out, I say this is a great franchise.
Exactly. I can't agree more. Guys, as always, if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe. How do you feel about the Hunger Games series? Are you interested in watching the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? I know I am. We want to hear from you. Who is your favorite character? What's your favorite elements of this series?
And what's your favorite young adult franchise in general?
Oh.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Aaron.
This has been Seeking Me Productions. And also look at our social media outlets, so Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for content we don't necessarily post on this channel.
Because as always, there's only so many hours left in a day and not enough time to do it.
All right. See you again.
See ya.